Hello, everyone. My name is Julie McVey, and this is Unordinary Made Ordinary, where we talk about extraordinary experiences of everyday people. And today we are speaking with Connie Hood. Welcome, Connie, to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. And I'm very excited to talk to you about your many experiences. And if you wouldn't mind, could you just give us a little bit of information about who you are, a little background into your life?
Okay. Um, I'm currently a writer. I've been writing my entire life on the job or teaching English or something related. But at one point, about 8 years ago, I retired from teaching and began taking, I had 5 filing cabinets of materials from family and friends who were deceased. And at some point, they had all their papers, their memorabilia, journals, party tapes, newspaper articles, all sorts of things about them that they had left behind. Obviously, it was important. And so I started constructing stories, 2 pieces of historical fiction and 1 piece of nonfiction so far, out of all of these documents that I've got from people.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. So you said the last 5 years? Did I hear that correctly?
Eight,
Eight
last
years.
8 years.
The last 8 years. Well, so okay. You're starting to go through these documents. Well, did you have interest in spiritual, metaphysical, supernatural before this time?
Always, it's always been with me.
Okay, so what were you just born that way, or do you feel that you started gaining interest at some point in your life in these topics?
I'm beginning to think I was probably born that way because I had early experiences that couldn't be explained. But as I grew older, it was kind of a joke among my friends, the things that I would foresee,
Mm.
the things I would spot out, things that I would quote intuit. There was an awful lot of talk in groups of friends about her intuition.
Ah.
And then how people started playing with Ouija boards and stuff when we were about 12 or 13. I scared the crap out of people. I scared the crap out of guys. I mean, I don't know. And
Oh,
I don't even play with something like that. I mean, I don't. I tend to stick very much to my own thoughts, but I kind of scared people.
so I think what I'm hearing is, well, you're only 12 at this time when you started messing around with it. So are you saying that maybe you were attracting spirits and they were coming in and talking through the Ouija board and freaked your friends out?
Yeah, I think what it is in my case is that there's some sort of continuum, and my husband and I talk about this. He's Irish. And we talk about there being some sort of a continuum right through the veil. In other words, like our main holiday a month ago was Samhain, the Celtic New Year, where the dead can come through and speak very clearly. And we have, we've got our candles lit, our stuff up, because we don't know what's going on. But for us, it seems to be very, very clear that the veil is quite thin, and it's possible to communicate both through documentation and the hard memorabilia that I had, as well as through identifying events and experiences that you would have no way of knowing.
For those who don't know what it means, can you describe what the veil is? And has it been getting thin for years or just recently, in your opinion?
Oh, it gets veil. It thins out completely right around the 1st of November every year. Multiple cultures do celebrations of the dead or those who have passed on. You have the celebrations in Central and South America, in Asia, Northern Europe. Every place that I can think of has some sort of a marker it's the timing is right smack between the winter solstice and the fall equinox. And it's right in there, and there seems to be just a time of year of the cycle when we are able to see and communicate straight through. It's gotten commercialized and sort of mangled with ideas of guts and gore and fright, but it's not really scary at all. Lots of times it's loving.
Well, I'm curious. So so the veil is thinner, would you say that if you are clairaudient or clairvoyant or one of these clairs, that those start to pick up? And if you,
Yeah, it's completely clear. It's just, it's I have had experiences after I lost my brother. I had experiences at 4:30 in the morning for years and almost daily that almost came through like emails. It was
so,
like just these fast messages from my brother, very clear messages, do this, do that. Oh yeah.
okay, so this is always curious to me. If you wouldn't mind, first of all, about how long ago then did you start having those messages from your brother? When did you experience
He
that?
was killed July 15th, 1995, and the messages
1995.
started up immediately with me and with other family members.
Okay, and the messages with you, you said they were like email. Was it, so were you reading words? Were there flashing words, would you say? Or you didn't hear voices, I'm
Yes,
guessing.
yeah,
Oh, you
they came
did?
straight through as a voice and
Oh,
an image, because it would, at 4:30 in the morning, you're asleep. He woke my mother up about 2 or 3 days after he'd passed, and he said to her, "Death is not death. I'm still
wow.
here." Uh, we've all been, the whole family's been going through it. I mean, it's odd that we're having
Wow.
this meeting before Thanksgiving, where
Yeah.
people talk about, they'll be complaining about their families, and I wish I had a family, they're all gone. But on the other hand, Halloween was they were all there.
So, okay, yeah, so it was busy. Who in your family, so when your brother passed, who in your family was getting these messages besides you and your
My
mom?
mother, my husband.
Wow. Okay. So even your husband, because I thought maybe, oh, it ran in the family, but
Oh,
then you end
and
up,
even stranger, our son, he was 12. He was in Italy. He was touring with a chorus. He was singing.
oh,
And
lovely.
he was walking back after singing at the Vatican. Now, he didn't know anything because we didn't tell him till after his plane landed back here,
Sure.
5, 6 days later.
Right.
He was walking back over the Castel d'Angelo in Rome, and he picked up this sculpture of Saint Michael slaying the dragon with the huge angel wings. I mean, the thing just looms, and it was large. The thing filled a whole backpack. We don't think anything about it. We're in the just the throes of this mess with my brother being killed. His
Oh,
plane lands, somebody
oh,
brings him, picks him up in LA, drives him to San Diego where we can work with this. And I'm in the guest room at that house, and I open up the backpack and I said, "Eric, what's this?"
mhm.
And he says, I bought it last Sunday. And he bought this huge, very beautiful statue with, cost quite a bit of money. And I said, "Do you know why?"
Mhm.
He says, "No." And I said, "Is it for somebody?" "No." And I said, "Okay, Eric, when did you buy it?" And he said, "Well, we finished singing around noon. So when I was walking back." He bought that statue within 10 minutes of the time I'd gotten the coroner's phone call.
Hmm.
That was kind of
Interesting.
interesting.
And he doesn't even know why. He's like, he was just moved, compelled to buy it. That's interesting.
Yes, he bought this angel slaying a dragon.
At 12, and it was expensive. That's an unusual thing to do.
Yeah, it was an unusual thing to do. And then, of course, he faced a fatal illness a few years later, and
Oh no.
he was just crossing back and forth over the lines, just going right back and forth very clearly
During his illness.
during his illness.
Um, so gosh, there's I as usual, there's like I have questions running through my mind here, but w- would y- would you mind sharing any of his experiences, if it's okay, that he may have shared with you when he crossed back and forth? What kinds of things or interesting information was he bringing back with him? And I'm assuming he made a full recovery.
No, no, I lost him.
You lost him.
We lost him. Oh yeah.
Okay, see, I know very little about
No,
your
no,
life.
no, we lost him. And actually, when I've been writing books, the first two that I wrote, both Chet and I sensed him sitting right on that stair up there, just sitting there, downloading information. Again, stories that I thought I was writing that were fiction, that it turned out were real. And I'm sort of, what the hell?
Okay, wow. Um,
He
but
was the one who should have been the writer. He was brilliant, and I'm just his mom,
oh,
you know.
oh my goodness. So I'm trying to put this timeline together, and I am so sorry for your loss. You've had two huge losses that you've already shared with us.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
the two younger ones. The other ones, of course, are the ones that are a generation behind. They go, but not the young ones.
yeah, yeah. Um, I'm so curious to hear how this sort of the timeline went when you're well, how long has it been since the passing, you said?
20 years from my son.
20 years. Oh my goodness. Okay, so and started communicating with you as well right away?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. It was it that piece didn't break off because he was floating back and forth in his last weeks. And that piece never broke off.
What did you think? Oh, I mean, what did you think about him going back and forth? Did you think that he was preparing to leave?
We knew he was preparing to leave.
You knew. Yeah.
Yeah, we knew he was preparing to leave. We knew what was happening with that. We knew that he was putting his spiritual pieces together. And
Mm.
we were asking the doctor, and we were sort of like, well, I mean, how long? And the doctor was sort of, it could be next month, it could be next shift. We are not going to know.
Wow. Okay. But he was in communication with you when he was conscious.
When he
Uh,
was conscious, and when he was unconscious, he was somewhere else.
um, what kinds of things did he share with you? That's what we were kind of just chatting about.
Just seeing people.
Oh,
He was,
seeing loved ones who've
yeah,
passed
no,
on.
and that happens. My husband and I have sat 5 family deathbeds.
Okay.
So that's one of the things at the end, is that your loved ones start seeing other loved ones who have already crossed over.
I've heard that before. I wonder, I'm assuming that's a preparation also to,
I would think it is. I actually asked a friend of mine who is a esteemed neuroscientist, and I sort of, so am I making up all of this stuff? And she said, probably not. That there's no scientific reason for life to be over.
mm,
Life transitions all the time, it morphs all the time, but we know that matter is a constant, and we know that energy is a constant.
hmm,
And she said, so it's sort of the changing, the transubstantiation, if you will,
mm,
of you know of what has been our body and what has been our spirit. And it was those were some interesting conversations, because
I'm sure, yeah.
you do question yourself, especially if you have people who are not sensitive. But then I also one time was in a meeting where we were talking about these things, and somebody said, "Oh, I wished I were sensitive and aware." And I
Mhm.
looked at the young lady and I said, "I do not wish you the grief.
Mm.
I don't wish you a loss that is so profound that it affects you in this way. Let it be. It'll,
Right.
don't worry. I mean, this isn't like, seeing the future or something. This is seeing, there's no timeline, and past, present, future. This is just something else.
Are you currently practicing medium or
Nope.
it intuit, or I don't know
Well, I
what
mean,
the
it's currently there, but no, I don't, because um, there's so much sort of chicanery attached to the way people do this.
Mhm.
There's fraudulent behavior. There's people who are truly gifted, and then they get under pressure and they make crap up. And I don't
Mhm.
want to do any of that. I also messages are not, they're not straightforward. When I just said there's no past, present, future, it's all in a mess.
Yeah.
Your messages are not straightforward. Sometimes it'll be straightforward, like a command, or our son buying that angel. But most of the time it's sort of a yikes, what is this? My husband
Yeah.
has talked about that. His mom had died of a severe form of arthritis, and after he was diagnosed, she appeared to him in a dream, and she was in a white dress, and she turned her head away from him and said, "I can't look at you. You've got to get medical intervention."
Oh,
Yeah. I
okay.
mean, so yeah, so Chet and Chet and I, we both just laugh that technically we're probably quite mad, except that we've had solid careers, solid home life, solid marriage, solid children. I don't know.
So, could you tell me a little bit more about your books? How many books
Yes.
have you written that are related to information you've received from the other
Okay.
side?
Well, actually, I want to pull up this one first, Islands of Deception,
Okay.
which is Lying with the Enemy. And this began with a sheaf of notes from my father, about 20 pages, single spaced.
Okay.
We had been separated since I was 6,
Mm.
and we had basically no relationship. But he sent this package of information out to me and a couple of other people because he had been a spy, career military. He'd been a spy. We didn't know. We knew that his communications were very strange. We knew
Mm.
that some of his behaviors were, sort of out of line with the way that we socialize.
Mhm.
Nobody knew when he was telling the truth, when he was keeping secret. Nobody knew why he was so paranoid. Nobody knew why he would go to a corner and weep.
Wow. Yeah.
And nobody knew. So I had that sheaf of notes, and I handed it over to some of the kids with sort of, "Hey, you guys, you're all screenwriters, do something with this." And it sat there for some years, and I said, "You know what? I want the notes back." Put them in a drawer, and my husband, it was bugging him that people were sort of, "Oh, who knows if any of this is real?" And my husband went into US Army reports,
Mhm.
found the matching reports.
Oh, okay.
And oh my God, this is true. Well, dad and his sister had fought for 60 years about who did what in the war,
Mhm.
both accusing each other of lying. It turned out they were both telling the truth. They were both telling the same story. So this
Interesting.
book is the two voices
Oh,
linked
cool.
up.
Okay.
But then there were incidents in the story that got stranger. So I have this nice half sister. We're at brunch one day, And I'm talking about my writing process because I'm very thorough with research. And then in order to write a scene, my husband, he's a fine actor, and the two of us will get up and do improv in the mornings. We do
Wow.
improv theater, improvise the scene, and then I sit down and write. And I said to Nancy, hey, at least nobody called the police over the knife fight in the backyard, the slow motion knife fight in the backyard. She drops her fork and she says, you know that Dad was OCD about his knives. I was sort of like, no, I've been gone since I was 6 years old. No, there's no way that I know this. And I had developed this whole persona where of a houseware salesman,
Uh-huh.
wandering around these plantations in the South Pacific, gathering information, out of uniform. And it turns out that the whole thing with the knife and housewares thing is probably was his real cover, and he is OCD about knives, or was OCD about his knives. And that was odd.
So you added this character and this information in your fictional book.
It was already there. I mean,
And right,
I was published already.
right. But you had
Yeah.
added that, but you thought did you just assume this was part of your creative process? You had no idea that you
Yes.
were tapping in
I'm sending
to,
him out to the jungle. He's got to have a cover. And then
interesting. Okay.
my husband begins reading the book on Wild Bill Donovan, who established the military counterintelligence, which becomes the OSS and then the CIA. There's sort of a transition of names. And when Chet's reading, it turns out those guys, most of them, their cover were salesmen because that was the way they could move around.
True. Right.
So uh, that entire segment of that cover, which is, really the heart of the story,
Hmm.
no, we didn't know. We just made it all up. Then all of a sudden it looks like that's pretty much true.
So does this end up fitting into the genre of historical fiction then, or how
Yes,
does
it
this?
is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I
Okay.
had to make up scenes. He in this book, he breaks up a ring of guys who are sinking Navy ships, and Japan has taken the whole Pacific all the way down to New Caledonia, which is out near Australia, New Guinea, and the Japanese have come all the way down there now. And he busts this ring that's operating through brothels. So that part I had. So I had all of the business on how he's busting it through brothels. But of course, yet then to make it, you have to make it in historical fiction because you've got to make up the scenes.
Right.
Yeah. So that was an interesting one. The other one, this one, Into Dark Corridors, is my new one.
Okay.
And it's a true story of saving an old house in the middle of Los Angeles.
Okay.
I became obsessed with this old house and decided that it had to be saved, and ended up running through the banks who owned the land, the city hall, architectural historians with what do we do to save this house, and ended up at least, as this is hilarious, single mother, small child, huge career, no extra cash. And I end up bulldozing the side of this hillside in Los Angeles, towing the house uphill. And then I'm sitting there with, now what do I do? But the thing that is kind of funny, may I just read one short scene?
Sure.
Okay. So this is a short scene because this book is nonfiction.
Right.
And in this short scene, speaking of rains, I can finally pay attention to the interior. The carpenter announces the downstairs floor joist shattered during the move. Ma'am, that's going to cost a lot for those 2x8s. First the foundation sills, now this. I turned my head, blinking away the dust, left the room. A long walk might help me figure this mess out. Headed downhill into fields of dried wildflowers. Took a little shelter in the cool barn, a great place to fuss and fret alone. Not even enough energy for panic and tears. The barn stood empty, no bird or rat to stir the silence. I startled, felt the tap on my shoulder, heard my grandfather's whistle, the same sound that pierced the air as he called us kids to work on projects. Rolled my neck, looked up at the ceiling, a ray of light pouring through the barn roof, rafters, 2x8s. I received grandfather's message. Boots turned in the dust, and I tore out of the barn, raced back up the hot dirt path to where Chet hammered shingles in place. Chet, come here. Down in the barn, scavenging for tools. I heard grandfather laughed. He tapped me on the shoulder. I felt him. Grandpa's grave sits in an upstate New York cemetery. I stood there wide-eyed, sure of what I'd seen. Not afraid, telling Chet about it sounded, well, not like me. Chet looked straight in my eyes. I looked up where grandfather pointed, the barn roof, held up by 2x8s, straight, clear lumber. We can salvage them, every damn one. You sure? Well, I think so. Chet yelled to his helper. Campbell, we're going for a walk. We salvaged all the lumber we needed to repair that room for my grandfather, who had been gone for a long time.
You had not heard, had a communication from him before that?
Oh, when I started bulldozing the field to move that house, I heard his laugh all the time.
Okay.
It was like
So
he was standing there in the dirt beside me, just
really
laughing. Yeah.
Gosh, it's just so interesting. You've been having these communications just drop in.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you have used them. Some people, of course, it's just the benefit of knowing that their loved one is still there to say hello, to stop by and say, hey, I'm all right, kind of a feeling, these clairvoyance, clairaudience messages. But you've been able to take bits of real parts of their lives, really, and bring them into your stories. I don't think well, Sheila was the other person who kind of got down, would get these downloads and be able to incorporate that into her writing. And I just wondered to myself, how many writers do that? Like, how many writers are really tapping into writers on the other side or messages on the other side, and they're incorporating this stuff into their stories. And a lot of them might have they're non-fictional or at least historical fictional kind of stories. It's just very fascinating to me.
You still have to write it. I mean, you still have to do all the composition and all the hard work of writing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you get this forward feed on events. And there are several people who a good writer, a good historical writer, is going to use a lot of fact and research in the piece at the same time that they're getting the sensation or the feel of, what happens in the setting or among characters or past generations of families. Edwin Rutherford is a major historical fiction writer, and he takes generations, like 1,000 years of generations in various families, and feeds them through that way. I'm certain that a lot of us have these images, fleeting or maybe not so fleeting, that inform what we decide to write about.
Yeah, can you remind me now, when your son was helping you come up with information, so you said he was the writer, but you've been a writer.
He didn't write any of this. He had been a brilliant writer. And I mean, it was interesting because I I taught at a high school with a highly gifted magnet, and where a lot of really famous people and journalists have gone through, even
Oh,
contemporary journalists now who are in their 30s. And I'm not going to name names because
oh,
because I haven't asked for any permission. The interesting thing was that as I retired, a colleague comes to me and she brought me a 12-year-old book that he'd written, a booklet, a short one,
mhm,
and that she had saved as an example of some of the finest student work that's ever come through that school.
wow.
And I'd seen stuff come home with 100 over 100 on a rubric for an original short story or things like that. He expected to write.
Mm,
It's just that he didn't get the time he needed.
mhm. So, please, before we're getting short on time, believe it or not, it goes by so quickly, but I want to make sure I um, leave you with anything else that you're feeling that's on your heart that you want to share, any experiences or of course, I wanted to also ask if you're working on any other projects too. So let's not forget about that. But anything else that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I'm going to just share it. It's a single sentence, and I think it's important for those who have loved and lost. Love goes on forever. Okay, when we experience deep grief, it's a product of love, and the love doesn't die. People do, but love doesn't die. And it can bring you a lot of comfort when all this stuff is rattling around you.
Mm, mhm. Thank you. Yes. Um, would you mind sharing how the listeners can contact you? If,
Please. Oh, www.constancehood.com
okay.
is,
Constance, is that your writing name? Constance
yeah,
Hood?
Constance,
Okay.
yeah, my formal name. So it's constancehood.com. Again, I'll just hold it up here. Ugh.
Okay. And a little lower into dark corridors.
Oh, this one
I'll,
is, I got it. I gave you the wrong book.
and
Yeah,
I'm going to put the links.
yeah,
That's
Into Dark Corridors is the current book. And of course, the old house was full of all kinds of spirits. And
mm,
that had to inform the whole process of deciding to save it and how it got saved and everything else.
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. That,
You're
that
getting
was
all this help.
all the way down to picking paint colors. When I would have my bucket sitting in the hallway, I'd start to scrape, and the bottom layer on the chip would be something. I finally called a friend, actually a historical preservationist. And I said, Andy, what's this with the colors? Why am I doing this? And she says, oh yeah, we use microscopes to take a look at that. And yes, you're just intuiting all the original colors of the house. Okay.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so yeah, I want to thank you so much for taking this time to share with us. And I will be putting all the links, in the video description. So if anyone wants to get
Okay.
in contact with you, but
Oh, and there's an Into Dark Corridors YouTube.
oh,
There's several videos tied to this book, and they're all up on YouTube under Into Dark Corridors.
oh, okay, wow.
Yeah,
Cool. Thank you so much, Connie. I really
thank you.
appreciated this time with you. And thank you so much to everyone watching. This has been Julie McVey with Unordinary Made Ordinary. And I hope you'll join us next time for another fascinating interview. And if you enjoyed this interview, of course, give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, please subscribe and then hit the bell icon so you're alerted to future videos. And I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening wherever you are on the planet. And as I say, or off the planet, because I don't know who's watching.
There we go. Yeah, they'll all be at the Thanksgiving table in one form or another.
Yay! Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you, Julie. Bye.
bye.